Now, there are other elements in the negotiation which involve the options. What are the options that you have to come up with an answer that will facilitate the transaction? Okay? And you need to come up with 4 or 5 options. Then, very important, you need to identify what are the standards that will help you show to the other side that your offer is fair. Remember what I said about what happens when an offer is perceived as being non-fair? The ultimatum game? This is how you avoid it. You avoid external standards that show to the other side that what you're proposing is fair. In M&A, that involves analyzing the transactions in the industry and determining a range for transactions. Okay? Transactions over the past 3 years that happen between 5 times EBITDA and 8 times EBITDA. And our offer falls in that range. Okay? So you need a way to demonstrate to the other side that what you're proposing is fair. Then you also need to determine what are the milestones in the negotiation. And usually my milestones are the ones that I show you in terms of the stages in the negotiation process. Preparation, discovery, negotiation, and then decision. Okay? And finally, the messages. You need to be clear. What are the messages that you're going to send to the other side? Okay? When I'm working on the buy side, messages, it says it's very important for us that the business continues in its exploration of the market and creating value for your customers. Okay? When I'm working on the sell side, the message is we have created for you a great platform for you to grow. So I'm just giving you examples. I mean, not necessarily this will be the messages, but depending on which side of the deal you're working, you need to have very clear messages that you will convey to the other side. Remember, if you wait until you negotiate, you sit down to negotiate to come up with this, come up blank. Okay? Because you're under stress, and under stress you're not thinking. So you avoid this by preparing. Keep in mind that for M&A negotiation, there are no templates. Every single deal is different. And what you need to do is be very clear on the principles, strategies, and tactics so you can then use them to your own advantage. Number one principle is the principle of being prepared in a negotiation. With regard to the right execution, what you need to keep in mind is that you need to have very clear milestones in the process that usually align with the negotiation process itself. And for each meeting, you need to know exactly what the purpose of the meeting is, what is the outcome that you expect to get out of the meeting, and what are the next steps. You need to take the lead. Okay? And fortunately, in preparation, the most important part, in negotiation, the most important part is completely under your control, which is preparation, which is what happens even before you sit down to negotiate. Now, also with regard to execution, be aware that our brain plays tricks on us. When it's working on system 1, we resort to what are called shortcuts. These are heuristics. Okay? The technical name is heuristics. These are biases in the way we think. And here you have 4 of the most pervasive biases in negotiation. Confirmation bias simply means that we will block any information that doesn't align with our beliefs. And you need to be very careful because that's how we look at reality. Everything that doesn't align to what we believe, we don't even notice. And this is very common in negotiation. So the way you avoid confirmation bias is by always negotiating in a team, that they are listening while you're talking. The anchoring effect is also used in negotiation. You probably have heard that in negotiation, whoever mentions price first loses. Well, my experience is that it depends on the transaction. Okay? Some transactions, I don't use a price tag in the deal. Some others, I use a price tag to use the anchoring effect. Whenever you see the manufacturer's suggested retail price in an item, that's an anchor. Okay? It means that in the way we think is that when someone puts an anchor on the table, meaning a price, every single other price will be in reference to that one. If you've ever seen infomercials, that they give you a reference price and they say, but wait, there is more, and then they give you a discount. The first price was the anchor. And now that they have the anchor, they give you a lower price. So you use now the reference of the price that they're giving you now to the original price to see how big of a deal you're getting. But that's a psychological manipulation. It's called the anchoring effect. And this takes place in every single transaction that you happen to be involved in, including M&A transactions. Loss aversion means that we are more prone to avoid losses than to accrue gains. We're more scared of a loss than a gain. And if you want proof of this, look at what happened in the presidential campaign. Everything was negative. Why? Because we are averse to losses. Okay? We respond more readily to a loss than to a gain. So if you want to, and actually there is something called the dollarization principle, in which you actually dollarize the benefit that you create for the other side, and then you show them not how much they're going to gain from doing business with you, but how much they're going to lose by not doing business with you. What you're doing, appealing to the loss aversion, which is, again, remember that they're under stress, right? They're operating in system one thinking, fight or flight. They're not thinking logically. If you show them how much you're going to lose by not taking your offer, okay, you're actually appealing to their loss aversion. Okay? This is one way in which you manipulate, or you're manipulated every day by infomercials. Okay? They show you how much you're going to lose. FOMO, fear of missing out, is real. Okay? And it actually has its roots in loss aversion. And then there is a sunk cost fallacy, also comes into play in negotiation. In every negotiation, there are 4 budgets that are always being run on you: time, energy, money, and resources. And the more of these budgets are run on you, the less likely it is that you will want to go away without showing something in return. Okay? So the more amenable you're going to be to do the deal. Okay? So be mindful in every negotiation about these 4 budgets: money, time, energy, and resources. So that's part of what the execution is. Also, in terms of strategies and tactics of negotiation, always, remember that second stage, the discovery stage in negotiation, is where you sit down with the other side to actually validate or disprove the assumptions that you came up with in the preparation. That's what that discovery meeting is for. But before you sit down to negotiate, you need to understand what the process is and negotiate process over substance, meaning what will it take to go from here to crossing the finish line? What are the steps that are needed on the other side to get this approved? Who needs to be on board on the other side? Is it the board? Is it the CEO? Is it the CFO? You need to understand that even before you begin talking. Then the other part that you need to understand is what will contribute to accelerate or slow down the process. Once you understand that, now you are in a good position to sit down with the other side in the discovery process, where your questions are geared to either validate or disprove the assumptions that you have about the other side's interest, BATNA, options, and standards. With regard to concession strategy, this is also very important. Part of the process that you went through in identifying your interest in the negotiation was to find out why you wanted something. Okay? But another part is that you now need to put it in order of importance, because it is only in trading the things with the other side that you create value. So you only do that through a concession strategy. And how you put together a concession strategy is that your starting point in a negotiation has to make sense. It cannot be a number that you pull off a hat, because then the other side is going to take you as a lunatic. So you have to make sure that you have enough room to negotiate. Your first offer has to be small, and every single concession afterwards has to be smaller. So you need to telegraph to the other side that every time that they try to get something from you, they need to work at it, and they're going to continue working at it. Also, always, whenever you give a concession, make the other part work for it. Okay? If not, they're not going to value. If they get a concession from you very easily, they will not value what you're giving them. And what you're giving them is part of an overall strategy where you're giving them things that are not important to you in return for things that are important to you. And that's the other part of the concession strategy. Always get something in return when you make a concession. That should go without even saying. Whenever you give a concession, get something back. Okay? Actually, that's something that we learned from the French. That's how the French negotiate. Okay? Whenever they give you something, they want something back. Use the same principle in negotiation. Now, if you ever negotiated with a Russian team, I've done it twice. And every time that they begin, if they want to buy something, they will give you a price that is so low that it's ridiculous. And then from there, they will begin working toward what they want. Okay? So they give themselves a lot of room to negotiate. The problem that they have is that the first number usually makes absolutely no sense. Okay? With regard to time tactics, remember what I told you about deadlines. Always try to find the deadlines on the other side. Never reveal yours for the reasons that I discussed. 80% of the concessions happen close to the deadline because that's when their stress happens. Don't be afraid of deadlocking a negotiation because this gives time for the parties to assess their situation, and you can always come back and reopen the negotiation or walk away. Because remember, if you have a good enough BATNA, you have walked away from the room with a conviction to say, this is a deal that is not going to work for us. That is a result of being prepared to negotiate. So don't be afraid of deadlocks. And whenever you're proposing something to the other side that is kind of wacky, give them time to think it over. Okay? Remember, when I was at the McLean Group, the chairman of the McLean Group would wait until the very end of a partner meeting. We were just walking out the door and he said, oh, by the way, I want you to think about this for our next meeting, and he will drop the bomb. Okay? He knew that if we would have proposed that during the meeting, we would have said no. Because what is our first reaction when we're unfamiliar with something? We say no. Okay? So by waiting for us to start working toward the door and say, oh, by the way, I want you to think about this for our next meeting, he was creating this. Very shrewd. Okay? I only realized this after several years of him doing this to us. Acceptance time. If you want to propose something that is a little bit out of the ordinary, give the other side enough time to digest it, because if not, their first reaction is going to say no. How do you apply these principles in negotiation? Be aware of what is called the seller advantage curve. In every negotiation, the advantage in the negotiation shifts from the sell side to the buy side the minute that you sign the letter of intent. The reason is that there is a clause in the letter of intent which is called exclusivity clause, which forces the seller to take the business off the market. Before that, they were controlling the process. After they sign the letter of intent, which begins the confirmatory due diligence, is the buyer running the process. So be mindful of where the control of the process will shift in negotiating an M&A transaction based on the milestone that the letter of intent represents. Also, in M&A negotiation, remember what I said, you need to move it away from price, okay? 50 million versus 45 million. Don't negotiate that because it becomes a distributed negotiation. It's a zero-sum game. M&A negotiation is a combination of price, terms, and conditions. Okay? It's just about the price, but it's also about how you're going to pay for that price and what are the overall conditions that are there to make the deal happen. What are the conditions to closing? Is there an earnout or not? Do you like the other part? Do you like to work with the other party or not? Those are conditions. And all that is part of the overall negotiation package. Delivery time. Who is going to do what for whom? Tax advantages. That's all part of all the issues that you will bring, that you will negotiate as a package. Okay? Because every time that you move the negotiation from a package to line items, you fall back into the zero-sum game. So you're not actually expanding the pie, you're just divvying up a fixed pie. Be aware of deal heat. I told you about this, the non-rational escalation of commitment that happens in transactions. So always negotiate through an agent. M&A transactions, like most of these transactions, are incredibly emotional. You're dealing with a business owner whose net worth is represented in the business. Okay? So they are not used to negotiate. They don't know what to say. They don't know the process. They don't know how to prepare for it. And at the same time, they become very emotional in the process. So that is one of the reasons that leads to deal escalation. Okay? So negotiate through an agent, and that is part of the sales pitch that we give to clients, that we do this for a living. We are experienced in negotiating, and we're distanced enough from the negotiation to not make emotional mistakes. That's the reason why doctors don't operate on family members. That's the reason why lawyers don't defend themselves. Okay? Because the minute that they do, they go into system one thinking, and when they're going into system one thinking, they start responding rather than reacting. That is the reason for being prepared and avoiding situations of stress. And then always give the other side more than one way to improve their offer. Help them help you. You can only do that if you are very clear as to what you want, why you want what you want, and what are the priorities that you want that, so you can start trading with the other side. This will allow you to give the other side more than one option. Finally, with regard to the information that you need, remember what I said, in negotiations, information rules. So if you are on the sell side, find out what the real reason for them to sell is. It's not that they are selling and the business is worth, $75 million. It's why they're selling. I got a call from a prospective client saying, listen, I'm selling because the industry is going down the drain and my sales are going down. That was very helpful to me, rather than him saying, I want to retire, I want to sell the business. Okay? Because then I would have to dig in or dig out the information, the real information as to why he was selling. Well, he was selling because the industry was going down the drain and sales were going down, so he needed to sell right away before the end of the year. Then find out what the buyer motives are for the acquisition. Are they buying just because they need a technology, just because they need a team, just because they need some proprietary process that you have created, or they're buying because they want to integrate your legacy or the legacy of your client into their own operations? Also understand how the business is going to be financed. Is this something that is going to be financed out of the buyer's balance sheet, or they're going to have to go out and get credit and put that as a condition to closing? That's important. You also need to understand what are their plans. What will happen post-deal? This is a very important point, because if you know this on the sales side, you'll be able to model the synergies associated with the transaction, and you will know where those points are in the chart that I show you about ZOPA, the Zone of Possible Agreement. You start knowing where those points are. If you're on the buy side, find out what they're selling. Why is the real reason for selling? Remember, they always tell you the reason that sounds good, not the real reason. That's what you find through questioning. So why is it that they are asking for that price? You need to find out the reason behind the price. Every offer has a story, and you need to find out what those are, so you can start now addressing the needs and not their positions. And finally, what alternatives do they have for the sale? You need to know what their BATNA is, and if you're working on the buy side, you need to weaken it. Find a way to weaken that. So at the very minimum, this is the information that you need, whether you're working on the buy side or the sell side. So in conclusion, some of the key takeaways from the presentation, but I hope that some of these concepts are helpful. And if you implement just one, do the implementation part, the preparation part, the cornerstones that I told you. That is 80% of the success of a transaction. So with regard to the key takeaways, negotiation, believe with two beliefs. Everything is negotiable, and there is always a best deal, a better deal if you ask. Look at negotiation as a process of convergence, where you are actually looking for a solution that addresses both sides' needs, which you have confirmed through the discovery by making assumptions in the preparation phase that then you try to confirm or refute through the discovery process. So it's not, think of negotiation as a conversation and not an argument. Okay? This creates a mental shift in how you see the process. Also, preparation is the single most important element in a negotiation. It's completely under your control, and it begins even before you sit down with the other side. You win negotiations even before they begin if you do the preparation right. And I gave you the elements that you need to put together a good preparation. Also, negotiate the process before substance. Understand whether or not the other side, or you're negotiating with the party that has the authority to give concessions or not. Nothing wrong with it, but you need to know who your counterparty is. And by the way, the best position to negotiate is having absolutely no authority whatsoever, because all you can do is get concessions, but you cannot give any. Okay? But you need to know that ahead of time, okay? Whether or not the other side has the authority to give you concessions, so you can prepare your negotiation strategy accordingly. And finally, never ever make a concession without getting something in return. Okay? Because if you don't, number one, the other side is not going to appreciate what you gave them as a concession, but it's going to keep coming back for more and more concessions. So as you see, there is an art and a science to negotiate. And the best attitude that I have found for good negotiators is this: I care, but not that much. Thank you.